This question is question 9.2 C10, and it's actually not quite as complicated as it looks. Let's go through it. First of all, what happens is that you borrow $12,000. You borrow $12,000. Now you pay it back in different payments. First of all, you pay back $5,000, and then you pay back $4,000, and then you make a final payment. So basically you are repaying that money in 3 payments. You know the first 2 payments, they're 5,000 and 4,000, but we don't know the size of the final payment. We know the time between each of them, and so as always do a timeline. So here's my timeline. The first thing is this $12,000. So you're in debt at the beginning to the tune of $12,000. Then after 18 months you pay back $5,000. So the time between the 12,000 and the 5,000 is half a year. Make sure you keep it in years. Is 1.5 years, 1.5, 18 months, 1.5 years. You pay back $5,000, so your balance is reduced. Then the next thing that happens is that there's an interest rate change. I've called it IRC. So the time difference between the paying of the 5,000 and the interest rate change is half a year. That's because we date everything from the beginning. So this first one was for 18 months. Then the interest rate change takes place after 2 years. So therefore, the time between the repayment of 5,000 and the interest rate change is half a year. The next thing that happens is after the interest rate change, we bring the balance forward, and then you pay back your second payment of $4,000. Now, the time between the interest rate payment and the $4,000 is, look at this, the $4,000 was after 30 months, right? That's 30 months from the beginning. 30 months is 2.5 years. The interest rate change took place after 2 years, compounded semi-annually for the first 2 years. So this is 2.5 years after we began, after you borrowed the money. The interest rate change is 2 years, so therefore this is 0.5 of a year. So there's half a year's difference between the time when you repaid $4,000 and the interest rate change. These are very important, these time differences. Now we have a final payment, and we're told that that final payment is after 5 years, and a final payment after 5 years. Now, the time difference between the 4,000 and the final payment is 2.5 years, isn't it? Because you pay back $4,000 after 30 months, which is 2.5 years, and this X here, this final payment, is after 5 years. So that's after 2.5 years, that's after 5 years, so this time here must be 2.5 years. Okay, now the first thing to do is remember that this is entirely a future value problem. There are many different steps, but it's a future value problem. First thing, the $12,000 will have increased to a certain amount by the time you get to pay back $5,000. So on the morning that you decide you're going to repay $5,000, it will have increased to 14090. So notice how I've done the calculations here. The n is 3 because it's 1.5 years. Keep everything in years times the py of 2. And so on this morning of this day here, when you decide to pay back $5,000, you owe the bank 14090. Now you subtract $5,000, so on the same day you pay back $5,000, so your new balance is 9090.9. Now we need to carry that balance forward to the date at which the interest rate changes. So we're moving from here, you've paid back 5,000, to the interest rate change here. The n here is half a year, times 2 is 1. The present value is what your balance was after you repaid the $5,000. So now your new balance on the day that the interest rate changes is 9590.9. Now we need to bring that balance forward from the interest rate change at the new interest rate to the time when you repay the $4,000. So now the balance at the date when the 4,000 is, so the PY now, remember this is the new interest rate, so the PY is now 12, is new interest rate. There's half a year, so 0.5 times 12 is 6, so N is 6. The IY is 12. The PV is the old balance that you had, and so we can compute the future value now as 10180.9. So on the morning that you decide to repay $4,000, you owe the bank, your new balance is 10180.9. Now in the afternoon, you have a nice lunch and say, oh, let's pay $4,000. So now we just subtract $4,000, and so your new balance on that afternoon is 60180.9. Now we're not quite done yet because we have to get the final payment, but that's easy. Now we're moving from here, you've repaid the $4,000, to here, this last X. So the final balance is, now notice the N, there's 2.5 years, times 12, so the N is 30. The present value is what we found as the old value. Compute the future value, and so what you owe on the last X after 5 years is 81114.8. That's the new balance. So it's a rolling balance. Okay, so it moves forward from 12,000. It increases because you've got interest rate charges. You pay off money. You now find the future value, move it forward, make sure you check that the interest rate changes. This is, I would like to emphasize, an extremely good question to be able to do. Thank you.